Alright, everybody. So as many of you guys may know, the 2024 election is proverbially right around the corner, and that means that the Democratic and Republican parties are prepping their nominations and their nominees for, you know, get the people they think are going to get nominated for actually running again. Obviously, for the Democratic Party, it is without a doubt going to be Biden, and he is, you know, he's got the presidency. It's not going to be like there's not going to be a Democratic primary, but there will be a Republican primary. And we are going to get to see the Republican Party figuring out who they are going to have be their front runner. It's not a contest. It's Trump. DeSantis is. You know, you've also got the people who are more independent-leaning within the Democratic Party and Democratic voter base who are thinking about what independent or more like off the mainstream figures they want to support. And unfortunately, there is sort of a cancerous tumor of lefties that refuse to engage pragmatically with electoralism in any way, and every time there is an election, rather than using their very valuable vote to support a candidate that actually has a stone's throw chance of winning, that actually, you know, supports a reasonable amount of their values, they instead back a figure that more accurately aligns with their values, but literally has no chance of winning. A good example of this are the Bernie or busters within the left, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. I know, a little bit of leftist infighting, huh? So, as you all know, back during 2020, the Bernie or bust craze was huge, and one of the people pushing it most prominently was Kyle Kulinski of Secular Talk. And you better believe that tendency has not left his body, even after a Trump presidency. Right next to a Biden presidency, he still seems to think that keeping Trump out of office by any means necessary is not a worthwhile goal, I suppose. Regardless, for those who don't know, Bernie is obviously not going to be running in 2024 because he's ancient. Based, but ancient, let's be honest. And his nomination, as far as his, you know, follower base goes, does matter a fair amount. Not his nomination, his endorsement does matter a fair amount as far as his voter base goes. He needs to signal support for a figure in order to sort of rouse his follower base into getting behind someone that isn't him. And obviously, Bernie has said time and time and time and time again, nothing matters more than keeping a psychopathic fascist like Donald Trump out of office. Nothing matters more than that. So he backed Biden in 2020. Might have been 2019. I think he immediately endorsed Biden after he dropped out in the primaries. Regardless, I think literally in his dropping out video, he said his highest priority now is to ensure Trump does not win, whatever it may be. Basically, Biden has done the same thing Bernie has done the same thing once again because Bernie is based, and he has endorsed Biden for 2024. Obviously, I don't think this surprised anybody, but apparently it surprised Secular Talk's Kyle Kulinski, because I think he expected Bernie to endorse Marianne Williamson, which is surprising because why? She's good, yeah, she's based, but there's literally no reality in which she actually ends up having a chance at winning. So why would Bernie endorse her and direct his voter base to vote for her when as many voters as possible need to be directed towards Biden in order to beat Trump? It's because people like Kyle Kulinski, and that's what I like to call him, Kyle Kulinski, are so lost in the sauce that all they care about is backing their guy, the person who most accurately aligns with their principles. They don't actually care about harm reduction or helping the minorities in this country that are actively being genocided at this point. Like, it's not even like, oh, if Trump wins, then he'll do this to trans people and this to abortion rights. No, it's a matter of if Trump wins again, he will continue these things that the Republicans who support Trump are already doing in the areas where they have unopposed control. So it's not even a hypothetical anymore. It's a matter of Kyle Kulinski very blatantly doesn't care about trans people at the very least.
All right, guys, welcome to the show. I have way too much news for you today. So we're going to get into it in a little bit. I'll give you the real reason Don Lemon was fired. I'll give you the real reason Tucker Carlson was fired. I'll give you reactions from all across the political spectrum. And I also have for you, sad to say, one Bernard Sanders has already endorsed Joe Biden immediately after he officially launched his 2024 campaign. And that's another thing. I'm going to play Biden's.
It's for a primary. It doesn't matter. The sitting Democrat president is going to win the primary. It's as simple as that. It's not how it's done. It's done. Biden is going to be the Democrat nominee unless something really bad happens to him. It's set in stone, okay? Don't stop deluding yourself into thinking some like out of nowhere super hyper progressive candidate is going to swoop the fucking nomination out of Biden's hands and all of a sudden he's going to or they're going to be the fucking Democrat nominee. Then why does it matter? It matters because it demonstrates that Kyle Kulinski is more upset about Bernie, his guy that he has some sort of parasocial relationship with in politics, supporting one candidate, or supporting a candidate that actually is a stone's throw winning against the fascist who's running, because he's just an ideologue who doesn't actually care about making the world a better place by the looks of things.
Launch video. And
he did the same thing for the general election. This isn't like, oh, he just does this for the primaries. He did this exact same thing and was known for it and was one of the biggest pushes for this during the last general election in 2020. So don't pretend like this is like me just shitting on him for this just because he's mad about a primary thing, okay? Let you calm down. Don't pretend like this isn't repeated behavior.
And react to it in real time. And civil war on the right is heating up yet again. Now we have Steven Crowder and Candace Owens revisiting their beef and their threats.
To be fair, on most things I agree with Kyle Kulinski, but like he's really got to stop. He's really got to stop with the Bernie or bust shit if I'm going to have a modicum of respect for him, because like I could disagree with him on so many issues and still like him. But when it's literally his willingness to make a political statement out of refusing to use the small amount of political power he has directly through the ballot box to help prevent Americans from suffering, I'm sorry, but it's just that's too much for me to be able to respect you. It demonstrates a lacking aspect of your moral character that needs to be there.
Of lawsuits, which is fun for everybody except him, but that's okay. So we'll dive into that and much, much more. You guys know the deal. Shameless plugs real quick. Everybody click like, click subscribe. We already passed that 1 million sub mark. Now we're trying to pass that 2 million sub mark. There's plenty of people who watch the channel but don't subscribe. I don't know what you're doing with your life. Just click that subscribe button, get it over with. You know you want to. Let's get it done. And remember, you guys can always listen to the full audio podcast version of the show over on Spotify. We dump the full show there every single time that we do a show. And episode coming up this week, you're not going to want to miss more important, which is about what I think it's later on in the show, and I'm going to react to it. But before we do that, I actually want to talk about what I think is more important, which is what you see on the screen right here. Bernie Sanders endorses Biden, rules out 2024 bid of his own. Now, I'm not surprised by that latter part, ruling out the 2024 bid.
I don't think anyone is.
Said he's not going to run. The only time he would run is if Joe Biden didn't run. He made that pretty clear. Biden has made clear for a while that he's going to run. So we knew that Bernie wasn't going to run. Now, in terms of the endorsement, if you guys remember...
Yeah, Bernie's too good of a person to use his blood in the phylactery all the other politicians use. So he's got to bow out at this old age. He's too good of a person to contribute to the normal like phylactery. So he's a normal man. He's got a normal human lifespan, sadly.
Wasn't that long ago. Bernie actually had some kind words to say about Marianne Williamson when everybody else in the Democratic Party, the elites, were basically scoffing at her and swatting her aside. And on that, it was sort of classic Bernie Sanders. just better than the other Democratic politicians. But now we have quite literally on day one, as Biden announces his 2024 campaign, Bernie's like, and I endorse you, and I endorse you. Okay, so here's what they say in the Associated Press. Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont said Tuesday that he would forgo another presidential bid of his own and instead endorse President Joe Biden's reelection. The leading progressive, who was Biden's chief rival in the 2020 Democratic presidential primary, told the Associated Press that he would do everything I can to see the president is reelected. Quote, the last thing this country needs is a Donald Trump or some other right-wing demagogue who is going to try to undermine American democracy or take away a woman's right to choose or not address the crisis of gun violence or racism, sexism, or homophobia, Sanders said in an interview. So I'm in to do what I can to make sure that the president is reelected.
He says this every time. Without fail, based Bernie always comes out with the headstrong, set in stone, unmovable statement that if there is no feasible possibility a far left progressive can get into power, then he will support the next best thing. His top priority is keeping fascists out of power in America, which should just be the top priority of basically any progressive, I feel like. But to Kyle Kulinski, it's using his platform and his vote to virtue signal about how lefty he is, I guess.
Interesting choice of words, talking about undermining American democracy, when we already have a situation where Biden has two opponents, and he's made pretty clear he's not going to debate them.
So Kyle Kulinski just said, Biden saying he's not going to debate his opponents in the Democratic primaries is equivalent to the Republicans and Trump's attempts to dismantle American democracy. You understand why I'm so harsh on Kyle Kulinski about this, right? On this topic, his brain is absolute pudding, okay? It melts the second you get him onto this topic.
So right now we're not in the general election. We're in the primary process. And Joe Biden is undermining democracy in the primary process. And Bernie's commentary is, well, we've got to make sure a Republican doesn't win.
How is it undermining democracy to not debate your opponents? What do you mean? That's not... Did Obama... I don't remember Obama doing primary shit. Did he? Obama 20... I guess it would be 2011, right? 11 Democratic primary. By Kyle Kulinski's standards? Well, it would have been 2011, because it's not the same year, right? No, the general election would have been in 2012. Wouldn't the primary for the Democrats been in 2011? Like, end of 2011 and end of the year? I'm pretty sure I'm correct about that, right? Is it the beginning of the same year the general election is held in? Am I misremembering? No, because no one was going to touch Obama. It's, we are not in 2011 anymore. Okay, so it was different with Obama because no one was going to touch Obama, but it's not different with Biden because supposedly supposedly Biden can be beat in your mind. Yes, you're retarded.
Because we don't want to undermine American democracy.
And you hate trans people.
How about undermining American democracy right now, where we pretend like we don't have a choice in the primary and there's a coronation for the guy who can barely complete a full sentence? Biden on Tuesday announced his decision to seek a second term, even as polls suggest that voters in both parties don't want him to run. By the way, the number is 70% don't want him to run.
I'm trans. Did I stutter?
And only 26% want him to run. The Democratic president will face the winner of the crowded Republican primary, which features former President Donald Trump and half a dozen lower-profile conservatives. For much of the year, Sanders had left open the possibility of running again himself. On Tuesday, he said that he would not run, and he discouraged any other high-profile progressive...
No, Cherry, that particular chatter has been dumbfuck posting for the last hour.
...progressive candidate from doing so either. His decision suggests that the progressive wing of the Democratic Party will ultimately unify behind Biden's 2024 bid, even if progressives aren't excited about him. Quote, people will do what they do, Sanders said of other potential primary challenges. I think Joe Biden will be the Democratic nominee, and my job, and I think the progressive...
Okay, so I'm sorry to break this to our boy, I'm forgetting his name right now, Kyle Kulinski, okay? But getting far left figures in power in this country and moving the Overton window is not a battle that is necessarily going to be fought within our currently elected, our currently elected representative population. It's not going to be them battling amongst themselves and the left gaining power. That is not how it is going to work. Unfortunately, my understanding, by the way things tend to be going and how most countries that are more progressive tend to go, is that it's going to take a battle of winning hearts and minds of the voter populace in this country. It is going to take basically progressive values just becoming more popular, as they have for years and years and years. We've seen as better conditions have been met for certain groups in this country because the belief that those groups deserve those rights or better conditions has become more popular within the voting populace. You have to shift the zeitgeist, as Sanmio Static just said, and move the Overton window within the population, and the Overton window within that population's representation will generally naturally move. The reason why Bernie didn't win any primaries and no super far left progressive ever wins any Democratic primaries is because most of the Democratic Party or Democratic voter base isn't that left wing. I'm sorry, but even among Democrat voters, it's John Ossoff's type of Medicare plan that's popular. Most Americans are not in favor of abolishing all private health care and all health care being taken care of by the state. Most people are in favor of a more moderate pay for it if you need it, or pay if you can type system. Like these more radical standards that a lot of more left-wing Democrats are pushing for are not that popular within the Democrat voter base. And I know this is a hard pill to swallow, but it's just true. If you look at polling on certain issues, for example, when you inform even Democrat voters on the implications of certain tax policies or certain policies to do with medical coverage and what impact that would have on taxing the middle class even, most Democrat voters aren't in favor of those policies. It is a long-term push the left and progressives have to make to convince people that this is the right choice. God, Zan is really just missing today. You're literally so wrong that I'm going to ban you from the chat because your entire worldview is antithetical to reality. You have no place here.
The movement's job is to make certain that he stands up and fights for the working class of this country and does not take anything for granted. Bernie, there's another option in the race. In fact, there's multiple options in the race. One of the candidates who's running is much more in alignment.
It doesn't matter. What matters is that as soon as possible, Bernie starts getting his base to back Biden. It doesn't matter if this is a primary. What matters is as soon as possible, Bernie took the opportunity to start backing the person who is going to be the Democratic nominee going up against Trump. It doesn't matter if this is a primary and that maybe he could have signaled some support for a more progressive figure within the Democratic Party. That doesn't matter. What matters is that as soon as possible, he took the opportunity to do what he could to help prevent fascism from taking a stronger hold in this country. That is what matters.
Alignment with what Bernie says his values are.
It is not the time to LARP. No, he's literally mad that Bernie won't virtue signal. Holy shit. He's literally mad Bernie won't virtue signal. That is what he's mad about right now. I'm sorry Bernie actually cares about, like, this country and the things that he says he cares about.
Look, understand something, guys. I get it, right? Like, I'm not unreasonable. I understand that when you're inside the belly of the beast, the calculation is a little different.
Yeah, didn't this guy also push force the vote? These people don't actually care about any, effective political change. They really don't. And I've seen Kyle Kulinski's talks with Vosh, where he totally acts like he's just this perfect little lefty, and they end up getting along. But, like, holy shit, do I think that Kyle Kulinski is a snake. I think he is a fucking snake who gets way too much charitability.
So, for example, from Bernie's perspective, he's thinking, well, if I endorse Marianne Williamson, let's say, which I wouldn't expect, but just for argument's sake, if he endorses Marianne Williamson, is Bernie defanging any and all influence he would have in a potential Biden second term? I think that's the calculation that they make, is like, look, I might agree with Marianne Williamson more, but if I go for Marianne Williamson, I'm basically cutting off my direct line to the president, and he'll be more impacted by more conservative Democrats, and they'll push him in that direction. And so I want to make sure I have an open line of communication.
I like this bizarre conspiracy theory bait that literally doesn't line up with anything about, like, he's trying to argue Bernie has some sinister motivations here, when Bernie has consistently, for like the last 10 years now, said every time Trump has a chance, like when Trump has a chance of being in power, and now Bernie doesn't have a chance, he endorses the most likely candidate to actually beat Trump. He's done this every time and made a statement about how Trump... Here, let me see if I can find Bernie's dropout speech from back in the day. Hold on. Bernie announces ending campaign. I'm pretty sure in his...
Last few weeks, Jane and I, in consultation with top staff and many of our prominent, certainly continue the campaign, but it's just not there. At the Democratic Convention, credible leadership and the work that needs, they cannot win, and which would interfere with the important work required of all of us in this difficult hour. Today, I congratulate Joe Biden, a very decent man, who I will work with to move our progressive ideas forward. On a practical note, let me also say this. I will stay on the ballot in all remaining states and continue to gather delegates. While Vice President Biden will be the nominee, we must continue working to...
This is for the primary. Like, there's no harm caused to Biden's, like, run against Trump for him to stay on the ballot for the primary.
Assemble as many delegates as possible at the Democratic Convention, where we will be able to exert significant influence over the party platform and other functions. Then together, standing united, we will go forward to defeat Donald Trump, the most dangerous president in modern American history. And we will fight to elect strong progressives at every level of government, from Congress to the school board. As I hope...
Holy shit, he's saying exactly what I said. Oh my god. He's literally saying exactly what I said. He's literally repeating what I said moments ago that the Bernie or Busters in YouTube chat were schizoing out about, word for word, almost.
I hope all of you know this race has never been about me. I ran for the presidency because I believe that as a president, I could accelerate and institutionalize the progressive changes that we are all building together. And if we keep organizing and fighting, I have no doubt but that is exactly what will happen.
And it is what happened. Yeah, like, Bernie has been consistent on this since 2016 at the very least. That was the 2021, but he also said the same thing in 2016. He has been consistent on this without fail. Now Kyle is trying to come up with some copium conspiracy theory about how actually this is some selfish, like, self-serving motive by Bernie to stay in the good graces of Biden. Which, to be fair, I'm sure to some respect this will help keep Bernie in the good graces of Biden, but we know what the primary motive is, and it's what Bernie has been saying for literally several election cycles now.
I want to make sure I'm a voice in that room. I want to make sure to do that so I can win on the policy priorities that I have. This is me steel-manning his case as to why he feels like I should endorse it. The other thing is he probably thinks, well, he's totally inevitable, so why would I buck power if he's going to win anyway?
Oh, yeah, and of course I've heard that Kyle Kulinski's Ukraine takes are god-awful, so I hear he's doing at least soft apologia for Russia. And like, I'm sorry, but when you've seen what's happening to Ukraine, like, that it's demonic to make any excuse whatsoever for Russia and to try to push any narrative in which, like, Ukraine is not, like, unambiguously the victim of Russia's imperialism.
I want to have more of a voice in the room. I want to be able to shape the agenda better. Again, this is me steel-manning his case. But the fact of the matter is this. Bernie himself in 2016 and 2020 was scoffed at. The Democratic establishment and the elites, swatted him aside like he was a fly. And from their perspective, they're like, this is a joke. You're a joke. And so Bernie...
I like his attempts to pull in the Nazgul crowd, the Democratic elites.
being in that position, being in that hot seat, he knows what it's like to be an underdog candidate fighting in a principled way for a better Democratic Party and a country that's social democratic. He understands what that's like. So given he's been on this side of the equation, you would think perhaps it would tweak his calculation a little bit. Now, I said from the beginning, and I've been saying this from behind the scenes, I think it would show tremendous courage just to sit out of the primary and say, hey, let it play out. Whatever happens, happens, and I'll back the eventual winner. I think that would show tremendous courage because everybody knows Joe Biden is a colossal favorite because he's got the entire media on his side. He's a bigger name. He's the incumbent. He has a massive incumbent advantage as a result of that. So I think that would show tremendous courage. But he didn't even do that, right? I don't expect him to endorse Marianne, which, by the way, in a world that made sense where you weren't playing power games, ideologically, you agree much more with Marianne, so you would endorse Marianne. That's the truly principled thing to do. But
it's a truly principled thing to do. I'm sorry. I think the truly principled thing to do as a leftist is to take the action that most likely causes fascism to not result in the deaths and suffering of shit tons of minorities in America, but that's just me. Maybe that's just my utopian worldview.
Still give it, I would, tip my hat to him if he said, I'm just going to stay out, right? But he didn't do that. On day one, he bends the knee.
He bends the knee. Dude, he's so mad that Bernie won't virtue signal. It's all that this is. He's just triggered that Bernie won't virtue signal.
And look, you just have to call balls and strikes here. Call it like it is. It's disappointing. Because if you look at, on paper, what Joe Biden stands for, what Marianne Williamson stands for, we know who the better candidate is. It's not even close. And this is even coming from a guy
I'm sure Marianne
I've
Williamson
told you guys,
is better.
Joe Biden has governed...
I like that now he's pretending that people on the left who disagree with him on this, think that Biden is, on terms of issues and policy, a better candidate than Marianne Williamson. No leftist is arguing this. The only argument is Marianne Williamson cannot win. Not the nomination, and arguably not even against Trump. Biden, unambiguously in both cases, can. In the case of the primary, he will. Capital W, Biden will take the W. Capital W will take the W on the primary. He is very likely to win the election, from my estimation. Even a lot of the far-right figures believe that Biden is likely to win in 2024. I believe it was Nick Fuentes, actually, who recently said that he's not feeling good about... Oh, no, I don't think I can show him because Twitch. But yeah, he released a clip recently, or a clip came out of him recently, saying that he feels very doomer about 2024 and how progressive Gen Z is. Nick Fuentes is a, psychotic Nazi piece of shit, and he is a liar, but he's not... he's not a liar in the sense that he is willing to lie to make it seem like his team is winning, if that makes sense. Basically, he will doomer on his show about how the objective fact is that the right is losing. He doesn't play that game of oh, conservatism is actually the new punk rock and it's taking off with the young people grift that a lot of conservatives attempt to do online. He's actually he's actually kind of I think he might actually be a true believer in that way.
Left of where Joe Biden, the senator, was. So he's been a better president than he was a senator. He was a standard centrist, corporatist, even right-leaning senator, and his voting record was not good. He's been a better president than he was a senator. He's to the left of where he was when he was in the Senate. That's great. But, as Bernie says himself all the time...
Okay, let's be real. Bernie's been a good senator, but there's been some times where Bernie's not been a good senator. One of my biggest complaints about Bernie was his issues with tardiness at certain votes that were pretty big deal. The net neutrality vote is the biggest one. For those of you guys that don't know, when it came to whether or not we were going to lose net neutrality, the vote came down to one deciding vote that would have allowed net neutrality to stay. Bernie was absent that day, and his vote would have been the deciding vote that kept net neutrality in place. But he simply did not show up. What the fuck, Bernie? There are other instances very similar to this. So Bernie's not perfect, but you know, he's definitely one of the good ones as far as American politicians go.
Can we really afford more incrementalism? And keep it real, going with somebody like Biden, you're rolling the dice with the country because he's the weaker candidate, and that emboldens
He was not playing the Dead Space remake. This was back in 2017.
the right, and that makes it more likely we'll have another Donald Trump term, or you might get DeSantis or somebody like that. So, I would argue this move from Bernie and all these Democrats who are just so-called progressive Democrats who are backing Biden, it's like, you guys are emboldening the right. You guys are playing Russian roulette here with the country. The more electable candidate, the better candidate would definitely be Marianne Williamson. I don't know if you noticed this. She can complete full sentences. She doesn't have a gaffe every other second.
I'm sorry, but you have no poll data that backs this up. Not only am I pretty sure no poll data exists that backs this up, but if it does, like if there is poll data, or that could back it up, sorry, but if that poll data does exist, I am almost certain it does not back up that claim. That Marianne Williamson would have a good chance at beating Donald Trump. I do not believe that. I do not believe that. I think Bernie has a good chance of beating Donald Trump, probably better than Biden. Marianne Williamson, though, I don't think so. I think particularly Bernie's like pro-gun, but still like, you know, very outspoken about the issue of like mass shootings and gun violence. I think that would be one of the things that gives Bernie a big heads up or a big leg up over the Republicans on the debate stage. If like they try to roll out some like, you're trying to take our Second Amendment, like he can be like, no, I am not trying to take away your Second Amendment rights to bear arms. I am very in favor of the Second Amendment right to bear arms. I am from the great state of New Hampshire, where many people will literally get mauled to death by a grizzly bear if they do not walk out their front door. Vermont, Vermont, my bad. Pretty close. I was very close. My bad. I come from the beautiful state of Vermont, where a grizzly bear may tear you to shreds walking out your front door if you do not carry an AR-15. I recognize the necessity of the average American to carry a firearm. I understand that, all right? However, I also recognize the very significant issue of... I'm going to go full screen for this. The very significant issue of American gun violence. It is a huge problem in our country, and we need to acknowledge it seriously. The number one cause of death for children is gun violence. Think about that. Think about that for a second. However, I am very much in favor of American Second Amendment rights. How was that impression, guys? Zan doing a New England Jewish accent? I'm doing a Bernie impression. It's different, okay? Zan, didn't Bernie also miss the vote to extend/end the Patriot Act? Potentially, that sounds right. Okay, I tried my best, all right? I'm doing my best. Bernie impression is better than Trump. I'll practice it more, okay? However, okay. Anyway, yeah, I think that's enough. Kulinski sucks.